Hello, thank you for joining us today to talk about post-OPT eligibility for off-campus work after graduation. This video is presented by the International Students and Scholars Center at Arizona State University as part of the F1 Student Webinar Series. A disclaimer, the content from today's presentation only reflects the current advisements of International Students and Scholars Center. Immigration is a dynamic thing and updates can happen, so we really do recommend that you visit our website directly at issc.asu.edu regularly for those current announcements and updates. So today we're going to be talking about optional practical training, essentially what that OPT means and how students use it. We'll talk about the eligibility criteria and conditions for students that are interested in applying, what that application can look like from start to finish, and certain cases of students working remotely, different types of jobs that might be eligible for use on post-OPT, and also implications of what that means after OPT is done, whether a student is eligible for STEM OPT extension. So optional practical training as a whole is a work authorization for F1 students that essentially allows them to gain that practical training off campus. The work does have to be related to the degree program that the student has engaged in. Students are given 12 months of OPT, which can be used before the student completes their degree or after. Those 12 months of OPT can be used as pre-OPT, which comes before the student completes their degree, or after the student completes their degree as post-OPT. Additionally, if the student is in a STEM-eligible degree program designated by USCIS, then the student is also eligible on top of the 12 months of work authorization to apply for a 24-month STEM OPT extension for a total of 3 years. And the USCIS processing time for general applications with USCIS is roughly 3 to 4 months. So planning ahead, knowing what that step-by-step process and what's expected is really important to get early on. That way you prepare yourself most to start working whenever you need to start working. So post-OPT, some eligibility is the degree completion of a degree or coursework completion of a degree. So it does come after you've completed the degree, depending on whether you were in one degree program or two. You can designate one of those degrees on your I-20 to essentially dictate the practical training that you'll be gaining in those 12 months. Minors and certificates are not eligible for post-OPT work, so it would have to come from a full-time degree seeking program. Exceptions do apply to this degree completion to thesis and dissertation students. We'll talk about those exceptions a little bit later, but some exceptions do apply to, again, those graduate thesis and dissertation students. One of the eligibility as well is to maintain status as a full-time student for 1 academic year. And again, it can only be granted per degree level. So if you've previously gotten post-OPT for a bachelor's and are now applying for a master's OPT, that is completely okay since you're at a new degree level seeking that same practical training at the completion of that degree. If a student was seeking a second master's degree and wanted to pursue OPT when they've already done it on the first, that would not be allowed. So when it comes to completion dates, there are a little bit differences depending on what degree level and program you're set up in. So for undergraduates and graduates who are not in a thesis or dissertation, you'll either meet one of these two completion dates. If you're in your last semester and only taking session A courses, then your completion date is that last day of session A courses that you're enrolled in. This one's a little bit less common, but for those students that are only enrolled in the session A course, it's really important to note that your degree completion date is limited to that end of that session A class. For most students that are enrolled in both session A and B courses, or just session C courses in their last semester, that completion date is most likely going to be your ASU commencement date or conferral date. Summer does have different completion dates depending on the courses that you're enrolled in, whether if you're only enrolled in session A, again, the end of that session A course, or session B or C, it's going to be that course date completion. We always recommend students speak to their academic departments to confirm when they'll be completing their degree, and so that they're aware what degree completion date is going to be applicable for them. You can visit our graduate student completion dates website for more information. We break it down for each different scenario you might possibly fit into so that you yourself can better understand when you are going to be completing your degree. Now, for thesis and dissertation graduate students, this can be a little bit different depending on where you're at in the timeline and the application process. If you're going to be defending in your final semester, then your completion date, like other students you can choose your commencement date of that semester the defense is going to be occurring to be your degree completion date. However, for students that don't meet that graduation college deadline, and you're going to be defending after that deadline, what those students can do is take a 1 credit hour of continuing registration in the semester that follows the defense, and you can select that end of that semester as well. So again, the completion date for those thesis and dissertation students is essentially when that final degree requirement is met. So you do have the choice between the ASU commencement date in the semester of the defense or the direct student defense date as well. So either of those two would work, so long as you communicate that with your academic department as well, so that we as your DSO know which date you're going to be completing all of your degree coursework and possibly your thesis as well. So again, please visit that site for any more specific breakdowns on where you might align with when it comes to degree completion dates. Now, post-OPT employment conditions are a little bit vague. There's tons of different acceptable employment when it comes to post-OPT, which includes volunteering, unpaid and paid internships, part-time jobs, full-time jobs. Students can even hold multiple jobs, so long as all of the work that's happening in this 12 months is being reported. So that's going to be the most important part, is reporting any sort of practical training you might be getting, any sort of experience, any sort of employment activity that fits any of these criteria. You'll want to make sure it gets reported as post-OPT work. The minimum requirements that you want to make sure that you meet every single week is that you're meeting the 20 hours minimum per week on average. And if you've used the 12 months of full-time pre-OPT or CPT, that does make you ineligible to apply for OPT. So you are going to want to make sure that you both haven't used more than 12 months of full-time pre-OPT or CPT, and that while on post-OPT, you are going to be working a minimum of 20 hours per week. Some additional employment conditions, it does have to be related to the degree program that you completed. Another misconception is students believe you have to have a job already by the time you apply for post-OPT. USCIS application for your post-OPT authorization does not require a job offer already. So you can apply for post-OPT and then still be working on seeking a job for that 12-month period. Work location is going to be very important on post-OPT, so you know what to report. Employment can be anywhere in the US, but not outside the US, as post-OPT is a US-based work authorization given to F1 visa holders. And additionally, once approved, you'll have that active EAD card. You'll only be able to start working only after you receive this in the mail and the date printed on that EAD card has already passed. So you want to make sure that you both stay within the time frame that you're authorized for, and both have received that approval with that EAD card in hand before you engage in any sort of employment. So when can you start applying for post-OPT if you're interested? You can start applying up to 97 days before you finish your degree program. So whatever your degree completion date is going to be, subtract 97 days from that, and that is when you can start applying with the ISSC. You can submit your application after receiving your I-20 from the ISSC 90 days with USCIS. So you want to make sure that 90 days before your program ends, that you can start at that point submitting your post-OPT application. Applying early does increase your chances of receiving that EAD card when you actually want to start working. So it'd always be ISSC recommendation that you apply as soon as you know you're going to be completing your degree in that semester and you're interested in post-OPT work authorization to increase your chances of, again, getting that approval with that 90 to 120 day processing time in mind. Want to make sure you get that application in early so you can get your approval early and your EAD card in the mail early as well. You'll want to make sure that you contact your academic advisors should your graduation completion date change or what those dates might be for your situation. So please confirm that date with your academic advisor, as this is information that we do try to make sure aligns with information that we've received from your department. Now that application from start to finish of applying for that post-OPT, again, that processing time of USCIS in mind of 90 to 120 days, you're going to want to make sure you start as early as you can. So as soon as you've determined your eligibility, you've confirmed that degree completion date with your academic advisor, start thinking about what start and end date you're going to want to select for your post-OPT. That's something that you'll have to submit with the ISSC so that you can then receive your I-20 from our office to then submit that I-20 in your USCIS application. So you want to make sure that all the information has been solidified early. You've applied for your I-20, you're able to receive your I-20, and then submit your I-765 application to USCIS within 30 days of that I-20 being issued to you from our office, the ISSC. All of those steps are done fairly quickly. That 90 to 120 days is going to be after submitting that I-765 application to USCIS. So a lot of that process is going to be waiting for that approval regarding your pending application. But after that processing time, you'll then receive your post-OPT EAD card, submit it with the ISSC, and depending on if that start date has already come or not, you'll be able to start working then. So on the right-hand side, you'll be able to see what an example EAD card can look like and all the information that's printed on the EAD card. On the bottom, you'll see a valid from to a card expires date. Those are going to be your start and end dates for your post-OPT, depending on what dates that you select. If approved, you'll receive a notice of approval in the mail, followed by your post-OPT EAD card as well. You'll submit that post-OPT EAD card in our e-form so that we can review and check the information is all accurate, good to go, and ready for you to start working on OPT. If you do receive a rejection or a denial or a request for evidence, we do recommend students submit that notice that they receive from USCIS under the Post-OPT STEM USCIS Notice Upload e-form. This e-form will particularly assist our office in be able to review the information that was given to you and how best we can guide you on options you might be eligible for still, depending on where you are in the process, especially if you're rejected or denied, or how to respond to a USCIS notice in case you're given a request for evidence. So when it comes to remote work, again, OPT is a US-based authorization, so the work does have to be with a US-based company. Now, OPT students can work remotely for US-based companies while adhering to all F1 regulations. So you can engage in remote work while being on post OPT, so long as the information is appropriately reported. Any work that's outside the US for companies that are located outside internationally is not permitted. So it would have to be for a US-based company, and the work should be done in the US as well. One of those reasons is you'll be reporting the employer address in the SEVP portal. And for those of you that are working remote, you'll be reporting that home address in your SEVP portal, as well as your My ASU information as well. That way, USCIS knows exactly where the work is actually being conducted for this US-based company. So if there's a delay in the completion of your thesis and dissertation, ideally, completion of your thesis dissertation will come before your post-OPT ends. So this is for students that aren't going to be they've completed all their degree requirements, all their coursework requirements for their thesis dissertation, but they're still working on their thesis simultaneously with post-OPT because STEM OPT will require students to submit their diploma and their proof of their completed degree. Students will ideally complete all of that thesis and dissertation work in that 12-month period. If students are not planning on applying for STEM OPT, they'll still want to make sure that they complete that thesis dissertation within that 12-month time period, because a student won't be eligible to remain in the US after those 12 months is over. Since after that point, the student will no longer be on post-OPT or any sort of employment authorization or new degree program. So if you do come under this circumstance, please reach out to our office to understand what your options are going to be as far as completing that degree. We also want to make sure students don't forget about their health insurance as well. You can check all of your health insurance information by visiting the ASU Health Services under Health Coverage Options. That's where you'll be able to find exactly when your insurance is going to be ending after graduation. So after your insurance does end, if there's a gap between that date and the start of your employment, or if your employment is not going to be having any health insurance benefits to you as the employee, we do recommend students seek out their own health insurance. Again, just to ensure for those students that are going to be possibly volunteering or engaging in unpaid work that might not provide that health insurance, or if there's a long extended gap in between that insurance end date and the start date of their OPT. Again, making sure that our F1 students are being covered and thinking about health insurance coverage during that time. An important distinction between on-campus work to off-campus post-OPT is that if students aren't currently working on campus as a student worker while completing their degree, that work must end before that program completion date. So not a single day after that degree completion date can a student continue to hold a student on campus worker position and get paid for it. So it's important to communicate with your on-campus employer, whether that be your department or an on-campus retailer. You'll want to make sure you communicate with your employer your specific end date and when you can no longer work beyond. For Additionally, you cannot start working off-campus until your EAD card is active. Students can't engage in work while their applications are still pending, as you haven't received the authorization to continue working after your graduation. That only comes again once you receive that official approval from OPT, received your EAD card in the mail, and your OPT start date has passed already or is the day of. You want to make sure that you don't work outside of those dates because that would be considered unauthorized work. A couple of common questions that we do receive. Can I change my post-OPT dates after receiving the post-OPT I-20? So this is going to be very critical to understand whether you've applied with USCIS as well or not. Because so long as you haven't filed your actual I-765 application with USCIS, you can still contact the ISSC to make any sort of updates on your I-20. If you notice an error, want to change your dates, or have any questions about the I-20 that we issued, please reach out to the ISSC so we can get those updates made or those changes made before your application does get submitted with USCIS. What happens if I get denied or receive an RFE, request for evidence? Again, you'll upload that scanned copy of the notice, which would be arriving through mail, through our notice upload e-form immediately. Our team will review it and will provide our best guidance on whether you, you can reapply, what your options might be, or again, how to reply to that request for evidence to ensure that all bases are covered and all questions get answered. It's best that we have that copy so we can review it and provide the best guidance to you. Can I change employers while on post-OPT? So yes, employment can change throughout that 12-month OPT period. No special permission from the ISSC or anyone is needed for you to be able to change from employer to employer, so long as all of these changes and all of these updates are being reported in the SEVP portal within 10 days of the change. After the 10 days, you will no longer be able to make those updates yourself. Reach out to the ISSC if that is the case for you, and we'll assist you in getting that reported to you for on your SEVP portal accordingly. But again, so long as all of the work that you're engaging in on post-OPT, you're still meeting the 20 hours per week minimum. And again, all of the work is related to your degree program. Can I start working after I file with USCIS? No, you cannot start working while your application is pending. The start date is current and you have your EAD card in hand. This includes intern or any sort of volunteer work. You cannot work until that approval date has come. So you also can't work while your application is pending, and you'll want to make sure that you wait until your approval date printed on your EAD card has come before you engage in any sort of practical training, onboarding, any sort of work-related tasks that another employee might get compensated for. What if I fail to pass one of my courses after I have submitted my post-OPT application? The important thing is to contact the ISSC immediately, as we'll be able to gauge where you are in that timeline of applying with USCIS, and in that post-OPT timeline as a whole. Whether this is happening before your program completion date or after your degree completion date, that will have different implications on how best we recommend students to move forward, as certain changes can be made to your program completion date so long as that program completion date hasn't come yet. So again, if this is the case for you, you'll want to make sure that you contact the ISSC so we can gauge where you are in that process and how best we can support you. If you're in a STEM OPT eligible degree, our best guidance is going to be to finish that degree program to obtain a diploma before the end of your post-OPT period. So if you're still completing that degree afterwards, you do have until that STEM OPT application process begins, where you'll need to provide that diploma of that STEM degree to complete that program. For additional questions, you can feel free to contact the ISSC through email, phone, or in-person and drop-in advising. All of those times can be viewed here. More videos like this can be found on our YouTube channel that both present on hold past and current recordings of our immigration series, amongst other things as well. Thank you all so much.